Technical difficulties.
Good evening, everybody. It is Jamie Paxton, live with Warrior Spotlight, where the stories are real, the emotions are raw, and the hearts are courageous. Tonight, my co-host, as always, my husband Billy Paxton.
Always, I wasn't in Colorado last week.
Oh, that's right. He was
Arizona.
not. Yeah, he was not in Arizona. I'll tell you that in a minute.
Yeah.
This is Russ and this is Grace,
Hello.
and they are our guests on our show tonight. Ross just thought he was coming for moral support, but Russ is going to be involved in this conversation too. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
for having us.
You're very welcome. We want to give a shout out to Mary Beth at the Center for Healing Connections. We cannot do this show without you. We definitely appreciate your support and your sponsorship of this show. We remind everybody she is our lead mental health professional who assists us in our equine assisted therapy. And so, again, we want to thank you, Mary Beth, for all that you do for us. So,
Thank you, Mary Beth.
yeah, thank you, Mary Beth. So we were just talking, last week I was in Arizona, and my daughter is the Black Hawk pilot. I don't know, remember?
Oh,
if
yes,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah, so she come to visit me and my sisters as well, so we did a live with my daughter, talking about her experience as a woman being a Black Hawk pilot. So yeah,
Very cool.
so, breathe, shake it off, it's okay.
I'm a little nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about. So we want to start with, tell us about your family. You're in the military, but how did you get to that point of joining the service?
Well, I was raised by, my father was a Vietnam veteran. He voluntarily served 2 years in Vietnam. And that was always
Wow.
something that I really respected, you know, where I grew up and the high school I grew up in. Nobody else's dad was a veteran, and
Where was that at?
Allen Park, Michigan,
Okay.
a small private Christian school.
Really?
and-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was okay.
Yep. So, you know, my dad was different, a lot stricter because the military,
Sure.
lifestyle, but I always just had such respect for it, and I always wanted to be in the military, but I'm the kid where I don't even want to go to camp because I'm a homebody, so don't make me go anywhere away from home.
Right on.
So to leave with the military was a huge deal.
Absolutely.
So I just thought, well, I'll never do that. My brother, he was 7 years older than me, and I always really admired him. And he enlisted in early 2007. And so that kind of got me thinking a little more about it, but I just thought, I'm not tough enough for that. So on my birthday in 2007, I just turned 17, the recruiter calls me. He's like, oh, happy birthday, you know you can enlist today, right? I was like, don't waste your time, buddy. I appreciate it, but we're not doing that. And then he's like, well, I know your brother. Well, that got me a little hooked, because if you know my brother, then I trust you a little bit. And he said, well, why don't you just come down to the recruiter station and talk to me? So I did. And then I thought I might actually do this. Well, I had to go home and tell my dad, because, you know, when you're 17, your parents have to sign for you.
Right.
So I still remember I walked in and I was like, Dad, I was just talking to Sergeant so-and-so, and I think I'd like to enlist. And he just looks at me and he says, it's not going to be a thing like what you think it's going to be. If you think you're going to be G.I. Jane or something, it's not happening. And I thought, well, he's just trying to scare me off, but it was so true. So my parents did end up signing, but my dad, I wanted to be intelligence, because I thought that was a cool job. And he said he was only going to sign if I picked a job where I had skills that could easily transfer to the civilian sector, especially because I signed up in National Guard, so I would be home and need a career. And so I chose paralegal specialist, which was not a coincidence now that here I am as an attorney. So,
We can't
cool.
fast forward that quick.
okay,
There's
sorry.
and
And that's
we're done. Doesn't work like that.
So yeah, I enlisted when I was 17. I did my senior year of high school, and then I left for basic training right after I graduated. And
Now, I'm sorry. Was it in the Army or?
yeah, Army
Army.
National Guard.
Okay.
So yep.
I got you. And your dad was in the Army as well?
But he was already out. He served during
No, I
Vietnam.
know. I understand.
So,
I didn't
yes,
catch it.
We're an Army family.
Army
Yeah.
family. Oh, okay.
So
Boots on the ground. Right.
yeah.
I gotcha.
My brother left almost the same time as I did. He went to Fort Benning. I went to Fort Jackson, and he was going through Ranger School when I was going through basic training.
Was 7 years older. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So I still have the letters he would send me on his little notepad talking about how difficult it was, but how he was going to keep going. And my dad would write us letters almost every single day that we were gone.
Wow.
Right.
And I still have a notebook full of them.
That's cool.
That's amazing.
And
Yes.
that motivated me the most.
Sure.
So what was
He knew
basic
it too.
like?
Wow, that's cool.
Basic? It was, okay. You know how living in a barracks with about 40, 50 women, that was a big adjustment for me. You know, a lot of different personalities going on.
Especially from a small Christian
Right.
school, too,
Yeah,
right? Exactly.
yes.
That- yeah.
I grew up in a private Christian school.
That's what I mean, because
the whole time. Yeah.
Allen Park's got big high schools, meaning large, you know.
Yeah. No, I had like
numbers.
22 kids in my
Right,
graduating
right.
class.
Yeah.
So it was different, but I got along well with most of the people, and I really loved it. I don't think my family really thought I would make it through, and then I got to tell you this kind of funny story.
Absolutely.
This is a little random,
The
but
show is yours.
when I was a kid, my parents used to force me to run. We would run around a lake, and I would cry and cry and cry. I was like, I hate doing this. Why do you make me do this? And they would force me. And when I got to basic training,
I can see him with a whip. You know, the way you there's a lot of different ways to force. It's either the carrot or the whip. It's one or the
no, it
other.
was more just like yelling, like, you
Yeah.
better do it.
Yeah.
But when I got to basic training, I won the highest physical fitness
Sweet.
award.
See,
Yep.
you didn't know you were being prepared
Yep,
for that.
yep.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
my dad looked pretty proud in
Yeah,
his hands
sure he
when I
did.
got called out for that because
Yeah,
I beat
yeah.
like 300 soldiers. So
Yeah.
I was
Sure
thrilled.
he did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it was
See,
fun.
so they did know something.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
It is.
And he would write me letters like, how many girls can tell their boyfriends that they threw away hand grenades? I was like, well, yeah, I guess this is kind of fun.
Yeah, right.
I did get homesick, but,
Yeah.
you know, the letters helped.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is.
And how long was your technical school?
10 weeks.
Okay.
So, and it was at Fort Jackson, so I just stayed there the whole time. And,
Okay.
my brother missed my graduation because he was still in ranger school, and they let him come up and visit me, so I got a little bit of a break one weekend, so that was kind of fun, because, you know, the officer brother shows up, and I was like, it's my big brother. So, I enjoyed it. It was kind of just like going to college, though, with a paralegal school, you know, you're just sitting in class all day long, so, but it was fun, it was interesting, and then I came home.
So, have you deployed anywhere?
Yes, I went to Afghanistan in 2012.
Okay.
So,
And tell us what you did there.
well, not be a paralegal.
Right. I was just kind of
Yeah.
just trying to figure out where that fit in. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. The running maybe, but the penmanship, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
Right?
So I was attached to a military police unit. So when we deployed, we did security forces advising. And I lived on an Afghan compound, which was really neat. And I just basically did security. So no legal stuff because there wasn't really, you know, people were
Right.
behaving themselves.
Right.
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 My unit got split up, so there's just a small number of us that were there. But, you know, we worked side by side with the Afghans, and I have a kind of cool story about my deployment, but I don't want to say that at this point because it relates to my brother's story.
Okay. Yeah. No
Oh, is
worries.
your brother gonna come on then?
No.
Oh. Well, no way. She said
No,
that.
I
Your
said it
brother's
relates
still-
to his story. You'll hear that
Yeah.
part in the...
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
Squirrel. What?
just
Okay.
go with
She
us.
knows.
Okay. Oh, okay.
You missed that part.
I didn't get the memo. All right. Guys, how you doing today?
He always gets ahead of the cart, trust me.
What's that?
I said, you always get ahead of the cart. It's okay. See, I told you you had nothing to worry about on the show. Okay.
So you were policewoman over there, basically, right?
Kind of, mostly
Right.
just guarded our area. and,
Sure.
Yeah.
With a gun.
Yep, I
Yeah.
sat behind a 50 cal most of the
Oh,
time
really?
on guard duty. Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a big gun.
Yeah.
No shit. That's cool.
So, and I'll say it now, when we were starting the show, before we started the show, you had started to say, I was just in the guard, and I didn't really do anything, and I don't want to let you slide with that, you know, because so many people, we are 1% of the population that raises their hands and says that we'll do what we do to defend our country, right? So there isn't a soldier or airman or any service personnel that should not feel great about what they've done serving this country.
Right.
So, I mean, and to go to to go
Right,
from being
yeah,
a paralegal,
right.
to now you're behind a 50 cal.
Right.
Kind of, you know, a
Big
difference.
deal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of a
it
big
is.
deal,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm very proud of you. I think it's
Thank
great,
you.
and I thank you for your service, for
Right.
what you've done,
Thank you.
and your commitment, serving in Afghanistan, and, you know, even talking about that, because you said at the very beginning how you didn't like to leave home, and that is a major factor, right?
Mhm.
You were a
Right.
million miles away from home, right?
Right.
Well, having the
And-
balls to sign up and go away, like I said,
Yeah.
I mean, whether kids that move away to another state when they're out of high school to go stay with an uncle or the military, that's just, it takes a lot of nerve, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't do it, so I get it.
Yeah.
Or I don't, but I know.
Yeah.
But I also know that, like you'd always say when, well, you were just in the Guard, that, you know, they don't think it's the same or look down, like you don't understand what it is to leave your family. Like, shoot, how many deployment, you know, you're going to Turkey and that, leaving your kids and
Yeah.
for 30, 60, 90 days, but, you know, how it's, you're not quite the military because you're not active duty.
Yeah.
When, you know.
The Guard is frowned upon a lot,
Yeah, or
You
just,
know, and-
it's like, eh.
you know.
Well,
Yeah.
they forget that we do both state and federal.
Right.
So
Right.
we
Yeah.
cover more than just federal.
Right.
And the Guard does a lot of overseas deployments.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
They do a ton of that.
When
Sure.
I deployed, I believe it was, we made up 25% of all branches that were there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I think they deploy more than anyone.
Well, yeah, and too, like when you went over to Turkey through the Christmas, so the whole unit left and went for December through Christmas. So you left, they all left their families here through the holiday and went over there so they could come home through the holiday. So that's big in itself, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you do the rotations and all
Yeah,
that, even
yeah.
when, you know, all that, it's giving them an opportunity to take a vacation, if you will, or come home. So it's all one hand washes the other, but it is. Yeah, I don't like that either. No, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because like you said that. Or like with you're a woman, they look down on you too. That's just not, yeah.
So, what was your most memorable moment in the service?
Does it have to be when I was, are you asking about just my deployment?
I'm just talking about any time.
I think my time at Walter Reed
Okay.
with my brother. Yeah. That was pretty memorable,
Right.
to say the least, and that's why I do what I do now.
Right.
So it really, really impacted my life.
So, do we want to get into the story of your brother?
Sure.
Okay.
Now you
Yeah,
know
I was
what
just
it
trying to
was.
already
Yeah,
put, I'm
yeah.
seeing the dots going up
Yeah,
again. I'm like,
yeah,
all right, I'm
yeah.
going to shut up. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I told you we were in training at the same time.
Right.
He was active duty though. He didn't go National Guard. And he got to his duty station about a month after I got done with training. And he was leaving for Afghanistan the following month, so I flew out to meet him and say my goodbye. And then he left for Afghanistan. Well, during this time while he's gone, my sister moves to Japan for work, her husband's job. And she calls up my parents and I, and she says, hey, travel is so cheap around here. Do you guys want to go to Vietnam? And I was kind of curious what my dad was going to do, but he wanted to go. He hadn't been back since the war, obviously.
Sure.
So we flew out there and go to Vietnam, and we actually got to see a lot of the places that my dad was stationed at. You know, he did all the research, so we could go back to the exact spots.
Oh,
and,
that's
you know,
cool.
That's
it was
amazing.
crazy.
Once in a lifetime,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
And being in the military,
Sure.
it meant so much
Oh, yeah.
to you, and then for
him
him
as
the
well.
opportunity
Yeah.
to show you and be
Yeah.
with you. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
So what we didn't know at the time when we were in Vietnam, though, was that the Red Cross was trying to call our house back in Michigan because my brother had been hit by an IED.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he was 6 feet away walking when an IED exploded. And when it exploded, his medic kind of panicked, you know, I guess understandable.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
So his interpreter actually had to stabilize him, like start the IV, and kept him stable until the medevac could fly in. And he was pretty bad off, to the point of they struggled to be able to get to airlift him to even Germany, and it took a while to get him to Walter Reed, and we had to get an emergency flight from Japan back to Michigan, back to Walter Reed, and I still remember the exact route through Walter Reed to see him for the first time.
Mhm.
because when you're sitting in basic training, they talk about IEDs and stuff,
Sure.
and you watch the videos.
Yeah.
But I always sat there and was like, that will never happen to
Right.
anyone that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's my brother,
Mm-hmm.
my big brother.
How long from
Right.
the call that you guys got the call to the time you were walking down the hallways in Walter Reed? What time frame, just roughly?
I want to say it was about 3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
and
a while.
during
to have
this
to
time,
wait. Yeah.
we kept getting calls
Sure.
like we weren't sure he was going to make it.
Right, that's what I'm.
And you're trying to get, like.
That's crazy. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Japan was on a national holiday when this happened, so like we had to get special connections to get the Red Cross to talk to the Japanese Red
Yeah.
Cross, and
Mm-hmm.
the Lord worked all that out.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to Walter Reed, and they ended up putting me on orders to be his non-medical attendant. So I would stay with him to take him to like all of his appointments and everything. And that, just to see how many veterans were. I would go out of the hospital at nighttime when he was sleeping, and you would just see them coming in. And I just remember thinking to myself, people back home don't understand what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know how many guys are really getting hurt, and how I just remember how many guys would be sitting in the hallway like without any family there. Like people weren't coming.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them would be crying because they weren't getting enough care, and I mean, just because there were so many people there. And it was really heartbreaking, but, sorry.
No.
I'm highly rambling. So, that was in 2009, like I said, and he just went through surgery after surgery. His knee had gotten blown out, and they couldn't fix it. And I think he had about 16 surgeries. And my mom went in for the last surgery, and she was like, the surgeon comes in. He never comes in before the surgery. And she said, could I just pray with you before the surgery? And so she started praying. The whole operating room's crying. And he calls her 3 hours into the surgery, and he was like, ma'am, I can't fix his leg. Well, funny story is, when my brother was in basic training, he had a battle buddy. And his mother is a surgical nurse for a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. And he had flown to Walter Reed to see my brother. A lot of his battle buddies flew in to see him. And he said, my mom is a nurse for this surgeon that probably could help him. Anyways, long story short, we ended up getting him to the surgeon. And after not walking for almost 2 years, he walked like the day of his surgery. So that was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, while we were still at Walter Reed before we got to Cleveland, 3 months, almost 3 months to the day after my brother was blown up, my dad started getting sick. And he never really was the type to get sick, and he actually went to the doctor because my mom forced him. And he had just gotten a physical, everything was fine, goes back to the doctor, and he has stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from Agent Orange exposure.
Mm.
And so then my family's flying back and forth from Michigan to Walter Reed to Cleveland, and, Dad's going through tons of chemo, doing all these was part of a world study at one point. They were trying everything, and he passed away within a year.
Mm.
So, but he lived long enough to see my brother walk again.
Mm.
And the interesting thing is, when I was sitting with my dad at the hospital one night, I said, Dad, if you knew that you were going to be this bad off, he literally weighed less than I did, and a lot taller guy, and
Right.
looked like a skeleton because it was just eating away at his body.
Sure.
I said, if you had known that you would end up like this, would you still have volunteered for both of those years? And no hesitation, he was like, that is what my country asked me to do. That's what I did it, absolutely. And that has always stuck with me.
I was going to say that when you said that, because I was during the draft, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
which has never been since that was 60, in the 60s, so if that's something. Just, yeah.
And to
Yeah.
be he never complained. He just, this is God's plan for him, and that's, never complained.
Mm-hmm.
And that just blew me away, but, I watched both of them go through that, and I saw how sometimes they would struggle to get their benefits and stuff, and that really kind of crushed me, because I'm like, Dad shouldn't have to be dealing with any of this, like all the paperwork and all that stuff. And my sister, am I talking too much? Like, you can cut me off.
This is all interesting, and this needs to be heard.
Okay.
No, this is. They need to know the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So
this is stuff they don't hear. Yeah.
My sister, she's 10 years older than me. She was an attorney already, and she took over everything for all them, like, got them all straight, so my dad didn't have to worry about a single thing. And that really, I took notice of that. I'm like, she can do things that most people can't do because she's got the skills and the qualifications. And so anyways, when I was in Afghanistan, my enlistment was going to be ending. And they were like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to extend, right? And I was for sure I was going to be a lifer because the military was my thing. And but I sat there and I'm like, all of that stuff with Dad and my brother, I knew it happened for a reason. And I just thought of all the people that were at Walter Reed that didn't have people to take care of them, that didn't have brothers or sisters and their mother to come help them out or fill out paperwork for them. And I just thought, I could be that for more than just my family. And I have the skills. I mean, I'm not a genius or nothing, but I'm a fighter, and I'm also a protector. And especially with veterans, I don't want them to be messed with. Because all I see is my dad,
Right,
my brother.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't fuck with them, right?
Right?
Yeah.
See, this is why.
Yeah. Mama bear, what do you call them now?
Yeah.
They call them, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So I
Don't
thought of
poke
my
the-
sister.
Oh, is that me? Yeah. Oh, okay. Time for that. Yeah. Shut our phones off.
He's new here.
It's my first time.
Go ahead.
So I had already had my undergrad, but they still, you get the educational benefits.
Sorry, what the hell, man? I shut it off.
Would you like to step out of the room and shut it off?
I'm about to throw it. I love them people that call back 5 times in a row. Go ahead.
You're important.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
So I'd already had my bachelor's, and you get the educational benefits, and I still had those to use, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to be a doctor or something, because I don't have those kind of skills. But I thought, well, maybe I'll try to go to law school. So I came home, took the LSAT, and was just like, well, if I get in, I get in. And I got in, thank God. So I went through law school. I ended up helping to start a veterans legal aid clinic when I was there. They kept that going a couple years at Wayne State. And then now I work side by side with my sister and Russ, and basically the biggest thing that I do is try to help veterans get adequate representation, because so many are being taken advantage of. So that's how I am here.
Well, we're definitely
What I'm doing.
Wow.
That's
And
amazing.
so, is it like a company? I mean, or a
Firm.
practice, a firm?
Small firm.
I gotcha. And that's all you do, is veteran.
All I do is help veterans. So.
And how do they find out about you? I mean, or where do you?
Well, we started going around to the different, like, VFWs and stuff.
Oh, I gotcha.
So just basically by word of mouth connections. So.
Will you click on the comments button up there so it'll show up there? Not on, you'll have to do it on there. Yep, just scroll up there and click on that.
Where's it at?
Don't end up, right there to your right. Yep. Okay, now we can see.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Brian, for watching tonight. So, tell us a little bit more. Well, let's jump over to you, Russ, and then we'll get back into Miss Grace. Tell us what part you play in this.
Well, my history goes back. In 1980, just got out of college. The economy was in the tanks, just coming through very difficult times and had a choice to make whether to stay in college or go looking for a job. One thing led to another, and I landed with a law firm as an investigator involved in asbestos litigation. I was with a firm, one of the pioneering firms of asbestos litigation in the country. And I began, and my role in the beginning was all investigative in nature, and took advantage of the opportunity, went to night school at Detroit College of Law, became an attorney in 1988, and I've had the opportunity to work with some very high-profile firms across the country. My firm was the Michael Serling firm out of Birmingham, Michigan. We primarily represented steel workers, building tradesmen, anyone who became afflicted with an asbestos disease. When I first started in this litigation in 1980, I remember that hearing that there was finally an acknowledgement that Agent Orange was bad and a compensation scheme was coming into play. And I remember one of the firms that we were aligned with out of Pittsburgh was very much involved in that process. 5 years ago, I'll tell you more about asbestos litigation if you're interested, but about 5 years ago I was thinking, well, maybe it's time. You know, things were such that maybe it's time I step away from the firm that I was with. And yet I wanted to enjoy retirement, but yet stay connected because of all the connections with big firms nationally. And I had met about a year earlier Grace's sister Elizabeth. Wonderful person. She has just been a pleasure to know and a pleasure to work with, and she had referred a case, a very special case, out of the Ford Ypsilanti plant, and but rather than just refer the case, she got involved. And sometimes attorneys don't like that, but I needed help. I needed help, and she was not only very helpful, but she was very, very productive in what she did, and I thought I would mentor her, but I think I learned just as much, if not more, from her than she did from me. And so when I kind of let her know that maybe it was time I was stepping away, going to enjoy the benefits of retirement, but yet stay connected, her and I kind of came together and continued. And quite frankly, she's kept me busier than I was when I was collecting a paycheck at the firm.
Right, yeah.
And so I am familiar with the family, with Paul's story. Came to know Grace, and think the world of their family. I never met your father, of course, but I've heard so much about him. For some reason, I feel very, very touched because I know Elizabeth at times has said that I remind her of her father, and that means a lot. And the one story Grace didn't tell that really captures her personality
Maybe you should not
is,
say
you're
this on
talking
live TV.
talking about all the, the running around like that, but didn't you become like the instructor, or didn't you lead everybody in exercises or whatever?
We don't need to discuss that right now.
But I love this, right? Because you've said something along the line that has inspired him, that you can tell how proud he is of you and what you've done,
Thank
right?
you, Russ.
So I
Well, I
think that's
am, and
amazing.
I'll give you an example what this is all about for me. My skills, what was important to me was networking, my connections, and my ability to gain cooperation with those I needed to. I was dealing with unions. Some unions were easier than others. Everything's a challenge, but my ability to develop connections with the unions and then become their representative is an ongoing process. And as I said, some unions are very difficult. The most difficult one actually was the UAW, because it was very structured and they had a system on how they dealt with attorneys. I get that. One of the first cases I worked with was out of the Ford Rouge plant, a guy who died of mesothelioma. He was dead and I needed help. And so I went to the maintenance chairman, and he was very interested to talk to me. This was 1980, because he had a lot of concerns that were still ongoing in the workplace at that time. And he invited me to speak to the retirees. This was UAW Local 600, largest union in the world.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I'm up there, and I gave my presentation, asked for help, and then afterward I was in trouble because it wasn't approved with the president and everything. So that's kind of how things are. But working with Elizabeth, the UAW has been tough, and so I just always kind of realized that. But when I came to work with Grace's sister Elizabeth, all of a sudden I've got an insight with the UAW that I never thought was possible, and that relationship continues today and in time as Grace became an attorney, and she's been to some of our presentations, and now she's become more and more involved. And when you talk about the veterans, I've always known them as a very important group to deal with, and for help, especially when we're lobbying politicians, because they are very much in line to what the veterans want. At least that helps when we're lobbying for legislation or protection. And yet it's been with Grace. I remember the first presentation we made. She was very well received. Everything went well, and since then we've been invited back and attending many presentations, which led to how we connected with you as well.
Mm-hmm. So then we're going to hop back over to you, Grace. So talk about, I know you said you help veterans, but specifically you were telling me about a project that you guys are working on.
The hearing loss?
Yes.
Okay.
So please,
This is a big one.
yes, please talk about that.
So, I mean, it's pretty short to the point, but
Right.
there's most veterans, especially ones like us that got out within the last decade, have hearing loss or tinnitus, the ringing in the ears. And, a lot of them just ignore it or whatever, but for most of us, there is a cause, which are the 3M defective earplugs. And I was issued them, and I think,
Yes.
were you? Yes. Most of us were. And so for veterans that served between 2003, right? 2003, I was getting confused. And 2015, that have a confirmed diagnosis of hearing loss and or tinnitus, we can file a claim for them, versus if you go on Facebook, you'll often see these class actions. Which class action, everybody's lumped together, then when there's a payout, everybody's going to be splitting it. But we're going to be doing individual cases against 3M. So it would be like myself versus 3M instead of myself and a whole group. So a lot of people that I've talked to about this say, well, I don't have a diagnosis yet. That doesn't mean you can't go to Sam's Club and get one if you know that you have these problems. So it's not too late for people if they want to contact me to discuss it. People also say, well, does this interfere with the VA? This has nothing to do with the VA. Does not affect VA benefits. Nothing. Completely separate.
So can you use a diagnosis from the VA?
Yes.
Okay.
We just need proof. It can
Okay.
be one simple letter, or, like I said, a lot of people just will go to Sam's Club because you can get, like, the certified audiology reports there. I think they're the free hearing center. I don't know if Costco does too, but you can even just do something as simple as that. So, and then as long as they have their DD-214 showing that they served between that period, we can submit their claim. So, I cannot give, obviously, a set amount on how much they would get. It's all dependent on if the litigation is successful. It's also done on a contingency fee, so a veteran that files a claim does not pay us. We only get paid if we're successful. So
So really, it's
There's-
a win-win.
yeah.
There's nothing to lose there.
no,
at
they're
all.
not going to court. They're not going to be
Right.
deposed. Basically, you got to give the documentation, answer a simple questionnaire, and you wait.
Right.
So
Well, and I mean, as veterans, you're connected with the VA, correct? Are you VA? Do you receive any services from the VA or anything?
oh yeah, the
Okay.
healthcare, yeah.
Right. So you know the process of it,
Mhm.
right? We talk about the VA on here a lot, and I'm an advocate for it because we live off the disability
Mhm.
that I get from the VA, but there's so many hiccups in that system altogether, right? And so to be able to have, somebody who, I know you said it doesn't relate, but somebody to fight for us, and we have to wait for things anyways, so, I mean, we know that.
Well,
Right?
that's why I said just go to Sam's Club or something, or even just a private audiologist.
But I'm saying, like, for you to submit a claim for us, right? It
Mhm.
could be 6 months. It doesn't matter. This is the life we live
Oh
connected
yeah,
to
you're
the
saying
VA
you're
anyways,
used to
right?
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Hurry up and wait,
Yeah.
Because,
right.
I mean, you can only see your doctor twice a year unless you're, or whatever it is
Right.
there,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lifestyle that we're used to after the fact anyways,
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I just want to make this point on we call it the 3M earplug litigation. What happened essentially was a couple years back, 3M, who knew these earplugs were defective, kind of paid a boatload of money back to the military. Not to the veterans, but to the military, because of course they made a lot of money in supplying these earplugs, and the military came to the realization that how defective they were in terms of all the hearing problems that were being experienced. Now what happened next was, of course, you know how lawyers are. They jump aboard, and it's all a matter of getting as many cases as they can and going about the process of advertising and collecting as many clients as they can, regardless of what they know or how they would proceed with any type of a claim. That is happening, that has happened. There are some high-profile firms involved, but there's a lot of other firms that are involved, and they collect cases intending to refer them to other firms, whoever that may be, sometime down the road. Now, what we have been able to do, I remember hearing this when I was, when this came about, and my reaction was I didn't react. I knew that, okay, let's see how the dust settles on this. But I saw the advertising, I heard about it, and then all of a sudden, one of the firms that we work with, Elizabeth, Grace's sister, and I were meeting with them in Illinois and talking about our cases and making progress. And he actually brought it up, and so we got the inside track in terms of what was happening, and it was good news. In the beginning, there was some good verdicts, over $1 million verdicts. There were some losses as well. Right now, there's a kind of a bellwether period where things are being organized. The problem in terms of resolution, as I understand it, is these attorneys are drumming up so many of these cases in the manner in which they are doing it that 3M, it's too difficult at this point to resolve. So what the thinking is, if they do resolve, they're going to approach the firms that are high profile, that have the type of reputation, that have only good quality cases that they're handling, and that's what we think is going to happen at some point in the future, and that's what we have aligned with. But right now, it's a matter of why we're going to the VA. Grace has spoken on this. She's motivated because she realizes that if veterans are considering making claims, they've got to be very mindful of their representation. And because how this is going to sort out is going to be a lot to do with their representation. That's the way it is in asbestos litigation.
That's, can I butt in
Yeah.
for a second? That's why I really got involved in all of this. Even before I even heard about the 3M stuff, was the asbestos cases with veterans. They are just, how many times do you see people go after veterans groups and they're like, oh, we love veterans, we do anything we can to help them. No, you don't.
Right.
You just see vulnerable people because they think you actually will help them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot of these TV lawyers, as I'll say, that tend to go after the veterans groups with the asbestos cases, like the lung cancer and mesothelioma, but they're hardly getting the veterans any type of award. You know, like, would you say not even a quarter of what they could get with adequate representation?
Well, it's kind of what we've been talking about is that all the advertising that took place, the ones who were paying the most attention were other lawyers. And they're saying, oh, you mean there's billions of dollars in this big fund? How can we get a piece of it? And so what was happening was had sprung up lawyers who from different parts of the country who happened to have connections with unions and sometimes veterans or whatever, saying, hey, we can get you money. It was so misleading for just being exposed to asbestos, and what they did was just the easy stuff. They just attempted to file what we call dispute resolution bankruptcy claims. What we're involved is first and foremost is representing the client, providing attentive, compassionate care, and that's with the court case. There's viable companies. We're able to obtain higher values today than I've ever seen obtained, in the 40 years that I've been involved in this litigation. But yet there's a lot of firms that are representing thousands upon thousands of claimants, and so how can that? Because the value is based on the exposure history. You have to have the ability to recreate it, and this goes back 30, 40, 50 or more years in terms to recreate the proofs that need to be done. You have to be an expert. You have to be experienced in this.
So you believe that strategically you guys are set in a way that other firms are not set to be able to help veterans.
Well, clearly, yes. When it comes to asbestos litigation, we've got everything in place, and
Sure.
And I just want to mention with the asbestos, sometimes we have encountered people that don't have a confirmed diagnosis yet, so they just have scarring on the lungs and they're not sure what to do. He and Elizabeth work with a pulmonary specialist to make sure that these people, including veterans or even veterans' families, get adequate medical monitoring so that it's not just, well, let's just leave this alone until it's a full-blown diagnosis. So they do more than just litigation, you know?
That's an important point. Elizabeth, her sister, really pushed me on something I always realized. As attorneys, there was so much more we could have done, because we would take in a case if somebody was diagnosed with scarring on the lungs, and we would do our best. We'd get money for them. We felt we were being attentive and had a good relationship with the clientele, and that was all well and good, but then come to find out, in a lot of situations, 5-10 years after we had done this, they developed lung cancer, a second disease from asbestos, and one more serious. And of course we would represent them again. And then it just became more and more common that this was happening. And so what we do is we get involved with awareness. We call it with proper understanding your risk, communication. We work with them on how they communicate with their primary care physician, and this leads to proper interpretation and early detection, because the earlier you can pinpoint the problem, there's many more options. And so yes, we get more and more involved with that. And
What if somebody's only has the VA for medical, right? And to where, like, I'm thinking of a veteran now, and I know he's got a civilian physician, but I know there's so many that rely strictly on the VA for their physicians, and
yes, we
so much of that is done half-heartedly, you know?
well, it is a point. It's kind of a sensitive point because we do encounter these situations. What we're able to do is make recommendations to go outside. The VA is very good in certain prescriptions and certain things, but when it comes to diagnosis and getting the diagnosis and a game plan, at least you're going to want a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And we're able to provide doctors who are experienced with the particular type of cancer that the individual, the veteran, is afflicted with, and a lot of times it's really made a difference. And
But who pays for that? Does the veteran pay for that?
you know what? I can't answer, but it's been done. I mean, a lot of times the veterans I'm talking about, they have the option,
Mm-hmm.
but they're so tied to their particular doctor. I know they see a lot of different doctors or
Mhm.
something, but a lot of times we come across a situation where the individual is short of breath,
Mm-hmm.
treating with the VA.
Mhm.
And the problem is we take the information, we get a copy of imaging showing what we see in the lung. We're not looking at the chest film, we're looking at the interpretation of it. And we, at times, will make the recommendation, look, here's what you need to do. You're
Mhm.
going to need a second opinion because we think we're seeing something else that is
Mm-hmm.
more serious, that your doctor's not really paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing the watchful waiting, but you already have something happening here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a doctor, but
Right.
I'm very familiar with medical records. I've seen about everything you can see, and so it helps in terms of, I don't give medical advice, but yet
Yeah.
I, through experience, able to provide names of other doctors that I think may be of help.
Well, and a lot of times I know, and I'll speak for myself, right, because I've had to go through claim physicians after claim physicians trying to get a claim approved through the VA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we honestly feel like, you know, you'll have physicians that'll go, this just happened to me. I had physicians say, yes, you know, she has X, right? Went back to the VA, and they weren't happy with that, so they sent me to another one, right? And it took me to number 3 before they're like, okay, there must be, right? And that is such a frustrating point for me, and I know for a lot of other veterans, right? It's like they spend more time trying to prove that we don't have things that we do have. And a lot of times we don't even know. Like, I just said this to my VSO the other day. Because they want you to file these, like, tell us everything that you have when you get out. Well, for starters, like the ringing in the ear, right? You can just go on without your day. You can go on throughout your day, and you've had it for so long, you don't pay no mind to it, right?
Right.
And so, but like right now, I have ringing in my ear, right? And it's always there. But if I concentrate on it, it's obviously there a lot more, right? And so, or what do they call that in the wrist?
Carpal tunnel.
Carpal tunnel, right? I mean, things that you just don't think of after 25 years of being, you know what I mean? You don't think of X, Y, and Z, right?
But you just put up with it.
Right,
And that's
yeah,
what they call the
yeah,
quality
and
of
we've
life.
just,
It's just basically
we have
you're
just
dealing with it.
tolerated that, right?
Or like when I got out, I still remember my exit exam. They said, "Well, do you have tinnitus?" I didn't know what that was.
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, "No."
We call it tin ear, but
Yeah,
yeah, same
right,
thing.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And then I'm thinking, "Oh, great. Well, I can't submit a claim because I denied it on my thing, you know."
Mhm.
But that's another thing. Even if
How
it's
does that
not
work though?
someone's
If you're not a
service,
freaking doctor, you don't even know. How old were you? How many years?
when I got out,
Yeah. When they
I
ask
was
you that,
23.
that's what I'm saying. How do you even, like you said, you didn't even know what it is. You have ringing in your ear. Well, it depends. How many things, you know?
No, mine's
After
like
I went to the
high
club, I
pitch,
woke up
you
with
know.
ringing in the
Yeah.
ear. But I mean, no, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that's almost unfair. And so you're saying because you didn't claim it then, now you go as you develop that, you can't go back
I
against
can
that ever.
I can tell you
Even
when
higher
mine
than you guys,
started
you could.
in
Right, but I'm saying
Afghanistan.
a veteran couldn't go back and then say because they were 26 or 25 years old and said they didn't have it at the time. Now they're 50
Mhm.
and they can't hear like you and and all that. And then you can't go back and revert that.
Oh no, I'm not saying that. I was just
You can't
I
go?
was
I'm just
trying to
curious.
point
That's a
out that
question.
for like our purposes with the 3M,
Uh huh.
some people have said, well, it's not in my service treatment records. Can I still submit a claim with you guys? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because we have proof that
Yeah.
you got issued those earplugs. And if you had it and you
Mhm.
can tell us that it likely happened
Just
then,
how does that if they didn't wear it? How do you know if they were wearing them or not?
Well, that's
know
a
what I
good
mean?
question.
Yeah.
That's the important part, and
Yeah.
that kind of speaks to
I
what
don't
I
want to be
was
Debbie
saying.
Downer on this and go the wrong way with you guys,
No,
but
yeah.
I know what PPE is,
A
and
lot
I have
of-
to sign and show you how to wear it, and then do you wear it? Whether I give you a respirator, and now you haven't wore it, and then do you know how to wear it properly? You know what I mean? There's
Right.
some gray there. I mean,
Well-
I guess I don't know.
Through Grace and her sister Elizabeth, the military family, we have some good connections
Mhm.
where we're dealing with, let's say, Fort Benning, and so word gets around because they see all the advertising going on, but they
Sure.
don't trust lawyers.
Mhm.
But when they call us, we know what to ask. We take them through. And what we're looking for is, the amount of time, the deployments. It's and there's a number of other factors to consider. If it meets mustard, then we pass it on for review, along with if they can collect their paperwork that we ask for. Then we send it on to the firm, the high-profile firm, and then they review it, and they'll either reject it or they'll register a claim, or the best part is they put it into an active docket, okay? And even though at first they may just register it, but they keep working on it and further developing the evidence on the hearing loss, and if it meets the mustard, it moves up into the active docket. And that's where you want to be in this litigation.
Yeah.
We're both like, yeah.
Need some mustard. You better get on that mustard sandwich then. Get your ears up. She can't hear for shit.
Yeah.
well, and there's a lot of people that
Uh-huh.
when they start looking at their service treatment records, you'll see that their hearing goes down after each deployment almost.
Oh, sure.
Especially in,
Well, the exposure.
yeah.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but you have to be able to have that record, right? I mean, I could go through my record like, the VA is something different versus and I was fortunate enough to get all of my medical records documented
Right.
and given to me before I walked out that door,
Mhm.
So that's how I was able to connect some of the claims that I have, or I'm still fighting for, I should say,
Well, I'll just say if somebody has a DD-214 showing that they served between 07 and 2015 and a diagnosis, doesn't have to be in service, could be yesterday, we will look at their case.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna.
Huh.
I'm not saying
So that
we
means
can
you could
for
get
sure
on-
win
you-
their case,
Right,
but
yeah,
we will review it.
Yeah.
Right, you could submit your stuff to
Absolutely.
these people
Yeah.
then and get on that.
Yeah.
Ah, that's cool.
I've had a couple deployments.
Yeah. But you can't hear. I can testify. I can take this here. Where do I sign? Yeah. Depends what side I sit on. I know she don't want to always hear me, but
No, I want to be able to turn it down. When I get
Yeah.
my
Right.
hearing.
you're going to get hearing aids right now.
That is factual. I am in the process of hearing aids.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah. So is there anything that you guys want to add to make sure that our viewers didn't miss out on something? I'll make sure that I post all of your information on how they can get a hold of you online,
Okay.
with all of your connections. But is there anything else that you guys want to add?
I just wanted to say that, like I said, the biggest thing I run into when I go to the VFW open houses and all that is the second you tell someone you're an attorney, it's automatically, I don't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Because they think we're all scammers.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I often try to share my story and why I'm an attorney.
Yeah.
But we do sometimes run into people that say, well, I don't have hearing loss or tinnitus, or maybe I'm not even a veteran, but I do have another legal issue. If we don't specialize in that area, we have a ton of connections between the three of us where we can make sure that they get adequate representation. So whether it's a veteran watching or a civilian, if they need help, we're willing to help them.
That's awesome. And so, but your specialty is this 3M and asbestos.
Well, and in addition, I wanted to mention, everybody's heard about the Roundup litigation as well, and a lot of people, there's a lot of misleading information out there, but if anyone's interested, especially any diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or hairy cell leukemia, that's a very rare form of leukemia. If they're interested, give us a call, and we'll provide you with more information and let you know whether we can help.
Yeah, my uncle had passed away from non-Hodgkin's. He got it, and like within months, he was gone. He was fine, and then all of a sudden.
How long ago was that?
Oh, he's probably been gone 4 years, 5 years, something like that. Yeah.
Was he a Vietnam veteran as well?
No, he was not a veteran at all. But,
Yeah.
so, well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming here and being on our show, sharing your story. Thank you,
Well,
Russ,
thank you
for coming along.
I didn't expect whether I'd be able to participate, but I appreciate.
Oh yeah, we want to be able to help veterans any way that we can help them,
absolutely.
right? And I've said it 100 times on the show. If it's only one veteran that takes something away from this show, it's one veteran that's getting assistance.
Yeah, if I can say one last thing, in
No,
particular.
Russ.
Time's up.
But
Yes, you
especially to the naval veterans, and I think it goes without saying, those who served in the Navy, they tend to be at the highest risk. A lot of veterans end up in their civilian workplace afterwards in high-risk jobs, but in particular the Navy. And so even if you're above the age of, if you're in your 60s or older, even if you feel like you're okay now, you might consider giving us a call, because again, along the lines of things that we should make you aware of, how to communicate with your doctor and medical monitoring protocols, we can provide you with that. So please feel free to call.
Well, thank you guys for caring too. That is the biggest thing, right? To know, and we know as veterans, that's the biggest thing, to know that we have an advocate speaking for us, right? Who really,
We get it.
yeah. Well, thank you guys so much again, and we look forward to sharing your story to all the other veterans that are out there.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
We will see you guys next week. God bless.